This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about obsolete office technology, we remember Michael Dukakis in a helmet, and we learn how to make a short story long. All that and more as we watch Season 3, Episode 14 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I am one of your hosts, and joining me like every week is my co-host and my co-brother. What's up, Imran?
Yeah, what's up, Sophia? Hello, listener. Boy, am I glad the week is over. I had a little bit of dicey week at work, sister.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Well, I accidentally got copied on this email about this dude getting fired.
Oh, no.
I don't think I was supposed to be on this email, but then the rest of the week I got to work with this dude and not say anything. And it was Friday, and we were leaving, and I was like, have a good weekend. And he was like, see you Monday. And I was like, maybe.
No.
And he was like, what? I was like, nothing. And I ran away, dodged a bullet on that one. Phew.
Awkward. Well, awkward, but I'm glad you brought that up because today we are talking about Perfect Strangers Season 3, Episode 13, entitled My Lips Are Sealed.
You know, that reminds me, this is not an official reference or anything, and I think this song came around this time, but
My lips are
My
sealed.
lips are sealed.
Maybe.
If you feel it anyway. By like Bananarama or the Go-Go's, or I don't know. But
It's
I always
the Go-Go's.
I always think of that song when I read My Lips Are Sealed. In the TV guide, though, the description would have read, Larry expects Balky to live by a code of honor on the job. But at home, he expects his cousin to reveal information about his raise, which Larry desperately needs to afford the sports car he's been admiring.
Oh, boy. By the way, the song is Our Lips Are Sealed by the Go-Go's, 1981.
Oh, it would have been popular.
Most likely this is the reference. Because as we know, all of the show titles are some kind of reference to
It's a great song.
So Larry wants a sports car, eh? This episode, of course, is starring Bronson Pinchot and Marklyn Baker as Larry and Balky. And we have some guest cast. We've got our favorite Harriet Winslow, played by Jo Marie Payton France. We've got our another favorite, Mr. Gorpley.
Yeah, I love
played
Gorpley.
by Sam Anderson. And we have a used car lot dealer played by Larry Goldman. And this episode aired on January 13, 1988.
Yeah, Act 1, sister, opens in the basement of the Chronicle. And we get a great song alert and song and dance bit as Balky is doing his mail and singing and dancing to...
Well, now we have to explain like what he's doing, because what he's doing involves a device that I don't think really exists or has existed for a long time anymore.
So what he's doing is using a system of moving messages around in very old buildings via pneumatic tubes and cylinders. And they still have these. If you've been to some certain banks, still have these when you go into when you had to
make a deposit,
or you needed a slip, and you put the thing and it goes shrunk.
It's a sucky tube thing.
It's a sucky tube, a pneumatic tube.
You put a little canister, a little cylindrical canister in this tube that runs up the wall, and it sucks it up to the other floors or something.
It's very steampunk, but this is how people had to communicate, old-timey buildings. And Balky is putting tubes in the thing, and he's singing the song New Attitude by Patti LaBelle from 1984, but he changes the words as he looks, and he goes, I've got a pneumatic tube, and then it goes shunk, which is pretty funny.
So New Attitude turns to pneumatic tube, which is that sucky thing, which was such clever writing on the part of the writers. Well done. Very clever wordplay. I was very impressed with that.
I love those tube things. They are always fascinating.
I got a pneumatic tube.
I always was like, where does that go? I want to know where that's
How does it, yeah.
How does it get off? How does it know where to go?
I have to Google how pneumatics work, but...
How does it get to the right floor if it's just like one tube? How does any of this work? I don't know.
And if you're listening and also wanting to Google it, it's pneumatic with a P.
It's a silent P, listener.
Okay, so that's our opening little song and dance number. So there's a series of these tubes along the wall. So he puts one up, it sucks up, he sings pneumatic tube, and the tube next to it, just then the same kind of mail canister drops down from above. They go both ways, I guess. And Balky looks at it, and it's something for Larry, and he tosses it over. And what it is it's used car ads. So then we find out, this is the nice little setup, that Larry is perusing used car ads, and Harriet's there, and he tells Harriet that he is looking for his dream car, which is a 62 Austin Healey 3000 Mark II.
Wow, very specific.
Whatever that is, it's a fancy convertible sports car.
Yeah, it's a tiny little convertible, almost like a toy car. We'll see it later.
Harriet hears this, and she is not impressed because, of course, she is the 1980s sassy black woman character on this show. She always has something to say, so she's not impressed, and she tells Larry, well, it's your life, honey, but I wouldn't buy one of those little convertible things. You're going to spend a ton of money and wind up sucking up bus fumes.
She's got a point.
She's got a point.
It's very small,
convertible in Chicago,
low to the ground. Yeah, no, and when you see this car, like you know how hard it is to keep a car like this in good condition in Chicago with the winters and the summers.
Yeah, not a smart move. But remember, Larry's a 20-something-year-old dude at this point,
and he has a sweet cherry Mustang, which is also
a sweeter car.
It's also a great car. Anyways, Harriet leaves, and my favorite, Mr. Gorpley, walks out of his office. And he's talking to Balky. He's asking Balky if he's seen a memo about his claim for gas reimbursement.
And he's like desperate for this information. He comes out with this air, and the premise, the unspoken assumption that they're trying to tell us is like Gorpley needs this vital information and he needs to get it. But what a strange bit of why would anyone need to know if their reimbursement claim has been approved for gas mileage?
Do his bills depend?
In what situation would you be desperate about needing to know that?
You're going to get it, Gorpley. Have you seen the memo?
Strange setup. Yeah. So anyway, go on.
So he's looking for this memo, and Balky goes, "Oh, they've already sent the memo up," and he says he didn't read it. But then we learned something new about Balky. He has a superpower. He says, "I did happen to glance at it, and sometimes if I just look at something, it sticks on my brain. I think I have what they call a pornographic memory."
He means photographic memory, and he bumbles it in a very funny way.
It's so
pornographic memory. Gorpley is suddenly very excited. Gorpley knows what he means, even though he botched the word. He's very excited, and he's like, okay, that means Balky knows what's in that memo. And for some weird reason, he has to know what's in this memo. He flatters Balky with compliments, tells him what a terrific job he's doing, this and that. Because he's trying to get Balky to tell him what's in the memo. And Balky says, Balky's just so pleased with these compliments. He says, Mr. Gorpley, people are wrong about you. You do have an ounce of human kindness.
I love this bit because Balky continues, and I just love that he goes around telling Gorpley what other people think of him unknowingly. And so, if you think about it, as the series goes on, Gorpley is...
So it's like a compliment, but that also reveals insults from other people.
But he's learning what his peers actually think of them. For example...
It's a recurring gag.
Yes, it happens just now. Balky's like, can I do you a favor? And Gorpley suggests that he can, and he could just tell him what's in the memo. And Balky goes, oh, that's easy. He's like, give me something harder. And Gorpley's like, no. Just tell me what's in the memo. And Balky starts to recite from memory what's in the memo. And he goes, quote, to Mr. Marshall from Mr.
Very
Pearson
slow. Yeah,
regarding Gorpley's mileage reimbursement. Approved. Gorpley goes, great. And he starts walking away. And Balky continues. He goes, but keep an eye on the little weasel. I think he's stealing the Chronicle blind. Unquote. And Gorpley's like, he has the look on his face like, thanks for nothing. He just goes, keep up the good work, Bart Tucker, but sit and walk away.
Disgusting.
Because now he knows his bosses think he's a slimy weasel stealing from the company. Yeah. So funny.
And we know that Balky has a pornographic memory.
And
then, of course, now it comes time for some classic Larry-splaining. Larry was watching and listening this whole thing. And after Gorpley leaves, Larry goes to Balky and he explains to him that Gorpley was taking advantage. He doesn't want to be friends. He didn't mean all those nice things he was saying. Yeah. He was taking advantage of Balky to get information. And then Larry explains Balky's job to Balky. Larry says Balky's job gives him access to a lot of confidential information, and it's Balky's responsibility to keep that information to himself. And Larry says, he asks Balky, you understand what a code of honor is? And Balky says, well, of course I do. Don't be ridiculous. We sheep herders have a very strict code of honor.
This is great.
Never practice wolf calls while the sheep are sleeping.
Makes sense.
Never eat lamb chops in front of the flock.
That's just mean.
And never, ever let them see you sweat.
And that's just good advice given to us from the fine folks from Gillette deodorant, because that was their slogan.
In the 80s,
I remember those "Never Let Them See You Sweat" commercials. Totally, I totally remember those. It was great.
Yeah, so I do. That's another thing I really enjoy about this show is like all the callbacks to the commercials, to the ad campaigns.
Which were like, they're part of pop culture, and it's an important part of, references.
And they're not anymore that way because we're not forced to watch them.
Oh my God, that's a good point. I didn't even think about
They don't become iconic anymore. Do they? I don't know.
I don't know. What's I can't think of like the last iconic commercial because you're right.
You can
Nobody
just
watches.
like pay for a Hulu subscription and skip the ads.
Yeah. Anyways, Larry says this mail code is a lot easier than the sheep herder's code. It's basically don't tell anybody what's in the mail. And Balky goes, don't tell anybody what's in the mail. Got it. Larry's like, okay. And he goes back to his used car ads and suddenly gets excited because he finds a 62 Austin Healey for sale. Oh my God.
And he's so excited. And he says to Balky, listen to this. New paint, wire wheels, radio, and 4 on the floor. And Balky says, oh, that's too bad. But you know what they say, 4 on the floor is better than 2 in the bush.
I love that. That's great.
It's so funny. Now, I admit that I got the joke because I know how the writing works in these shows by now.
I mean, but
I had no idea what 4. Yeah, so 4 on the floor is better than 2 in the bush.
Bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush.
Is a corruption of that idiom. But what is 4 on the floor? The original reference.
Now, look, I will
idea.
also admit I'm like not a huge car guy. I like cars. I know they look pretty. I like looking at them and driving them. But I'm also like I don't know. I thought it had something to do with the gears and a manual transmission.
You're correct. I did a little bit of Google research. And 4 on the floor is a 4-speed manual gear shift mounted on the floor of a motor vehicle. I don't even understand the description.
Instead of like the transmission
it's
is
on
like
the floor.
I don't
where your feet are.
I guess 4 on the floor, but I know that saying, and I never knew what it meant exactly. So,
okay. I just did an image search.
Is it a racing thing?
No, it's like where that gear shift thing comes from.
Oh, straight up
floor.
From the ground instead of on the side.
Yeah, it's like a long stick that comes from the ground, not from a console.
Or not from the steering wheel or whatever.
Not from
or
the
anywhere
steering
else.
wheel.
Yeah. Got it.
Got it.
Duh. Oh my God, we're idiots.
2021.
Yes. We'll figure this out, listener.
Okay. Oh, I'm so glad we learned about 4 on the floor.
I need 3 on the ceiling.
4 on the floor also sounds like some kind of euphemism for something that is not appropriate for this family-friendly podcast. Okay, so we get a funny a corruption of an idiom from Balky, and then we cut to the next scene, which is later that evening. And Balky and Larry arrive at this used car lot, which looks a lot like...
it looks a lot like the Christmas tree
lot
back
with
in
the trailer
the
in the back.
Yeah.
And an outdoor area.
Well, look, it's not. It's seasonal. That guy moved out because it's not Christmas season, and Lou came in and he's selling cars.
Convenient.
Lou's used cars.
So it's called Lou's Used Cars. There's a big sign. And right in front and center, in front of the trailer, is this beautiful, shiny, red 62 Austin Healey 3000 Mark II. And it's got a price sign on it. And we'll get to that in a minute. But it's right there. It's for sale. And they walk in and they're both oohing and awing over it. And Belky says, oh, cousin, you really stepped in something good this time.
Yeah, great use of that.
A favorite recurring phrase. And Larry says, it's perfect. I'd give my right arm for this car. And dear sweet Balky says, well, how would you shift gears?
That's a good point.
That is a good line.
And then Lou, the car lot dealer, steps up and he's like, you guys, boys interested in this car? And Larry starts to talk, but Balky cuts him off, of course, to blow up his spot and tells Lou how much Larry does like the car. He goes, are you kidding? Is he interested in this car? Doesn't Meat Pete spit in the woods? At which point, Larry pulls him aside and goes, Balky, what are you doing? Larry explains to Balky
Larry splaining
that if Lou knows how much he really wants the car, he won't be able to negotiate the price down. And Balky gets it. He goes, I'm the best bargainer on Meepos. Why don't we just quit beating around the George Bush and get on with this? That's a great
beating around George Bush
reference.
and get on with this. Now, of course, this is January 1988, and we're going to talk about what was happening with George Bush a little bit later.
He was in the news a lot. And also, we've seen Balky negotiate very well. You know, I instantly thought of, remember, he got the typewriter, and Marianne or Jennifer was like, you were great. And instantly I'm like,
we know
Larry,
he can
let
negotiate.
Balky do this. But of course, Larry's not going to let that happen, is he?
He scoffs, as Larry does often. He scoffs, and of course, and he again goes into this sort of pedantic Larry-splaining mode, and he insists on handling it himself because this requires more finesse than bargaining over the price of sheep.
Oh,
so
boy.
rude.
Condescending much, Larry Appleton.
So rude. And Balky tries to argue with him, and they have this little back and forth. But until Larry says, watch and learn. And at this point, Balky has heard this so many times that he just kind of rolls his eyes and does this little, like, go on hand gesture.
Love it. It's so funny.
Little curl of the hand.
There's no point in saying anything after watching the and just go ahead, you big dummy.
So that was a very funny, unspoken line, like a lot of communication with this hand gesture. So Larry turns around to Lou, and he does some, I might add, terrible bargaining.
Yeah, he's not good at this at all.
He says he's not sure about the car. It probably needs a lot of work. And then he goes, what do you say? I do you a favor and take this lemon off your hands for, say, $4,000. And Lou points to the sign that's sitting on the windshield. And he says, the price of the car is $7,500, which I know is like more than $4,000, but I might add that still feels pretty cheap.
For that sweet convertible, really.
But maybe in '88 it was like what it was worth. But $7,500 is pretty cheap, yeah.
Yeah, it seems cheap for that car. And then Larry does something that he always does to Balky, and now he's doing it to the used car lot. He goes, Lou. That's never
my goodness.
That's never good when he does that. He goes, we both know this number means nothing. And he takes a sign and he rips it in half. And Lou's like, you tore up my sign. And then Larry goes, $5,000. That's my best offer. And then Lou just goes, my kid made that sign.
Yeah, that was
Larry
so sad.
Really
and Larry...
so funny. And he kind of puts it back. He tries to put the sign back together.
Put it back. And then Larry, that's it. That's the end of Larry's bargaining.
That's all
he just
has.
gives up.
Yeah.
And then he turns into whiny Larry. And he goes, but I don't have $7,500.
It's just whining.
I really love this car. And Lou is unfazed by his whining, and he tells him that he's got a buyer coming at 9:00 who's willing to pay the price. But if Larry gets there first and pays the price, he can have the car. Classic used car
There's
tactic.
no buyer. There's no buyer coming. No, there's
Call
no buyer.
his bluff, Larry. Come on. Call his bluff.
No.
But it totally works on Larry.
Yeah.
And Larry walks away. Lou walks away. Larry's just standing there kind of defeated. And then Balky leans in. He's like, shall I assume class is over? Because he watched this whole disaster happen and he knew. He knew. That's the end of the scene and the end of the act. But I want to say something here. This like scene in a sitcom about pretending you're not interested in a car or you don't have a lot of money at a used car dealership to try to get a better price is such a classic sitcom scene. I can immediately thought of two, both old sitcoms and new sitcoms where I've seen this. One that sticks out is, I know, but we still have to talk about The Cosby Show because we grew up on that show.
I mean, that one is classic. That one I'll never forget, where Gilbert Gottfried shows up.
Dr. Huxtable!
And they're like dressed in sweatpants. Yeah. It's Gilbert Gottfried. And he's like, what are you doing? What are you wearing? Look at you. What are you doing here? This guy, you can't believe he's wearing this. It's so funny. It's so good.
And more recently, I know this because I just rewatched the entire series for the 100th time. There was a very similar scene in Schitt's Creek.
Oh, I've not seen this.
Where Johnny and Moira, Schitt's Creek, the whole premise of the show is the rich family loses all their money. They end up living in this small town. And they want to, at one point, want to get a car. And they also dress down. They borrow other people's clothes. And they come up with these stories to try to get this. And they also get found out and recognized as well. It's very similar to the Cosby Show scene. Both scenes are similar to each other, a little bit different than this, but it just struck me that this theme of like trying to outsmart a car dealership.
This is one of those universal setups that you can recycle every so often, and it works. It's a great basic setup for comedy.
Yeah.
Listener, let us know what your bargaining negotiation skills are like. Join our Facebook group or let us know what you think of every episode we record, because I post a thread there for every episode we're recording as we record them, because we record early, and you can leave your comments and observations and meet other people who are obsessed about the show like we are. That's the most important thing, is we have created
maybe even more obsessed.
A perfect strangers cottage fandom industry, and that's headquarters there. It's where we hang out and
we
really
have indeed, and it's so
dig
lovely.
deep into every episode, every line, and what's in the background. Oh man, it's a lot of fun. It's a nice little escape.
Clothing, the
Everything.
shadows, the bloopers, everything gets discussed in the group, and we are here for it.
You can find a link in our show notes in every episode to join the group. Do it, and we'll shout you out, and we'll welcome you. Act 2, sister.
Act 2, we are now in the apartment, and Larry is on the couch, and he has like a notepad, this like old school kind of adding machine. It's like a calculator, but bigger, and it prints to a roll of receipt paper. What do you call that thing?
That's what it is. It's an adding machine. Remember those?
And
like you had to have those.
Punching numbers on it, like with the end of a pencil.
This is even before like calculators were a little bit of like a fancy thing.
Yeah, it was bigger than a calculator.
Yeah, most people I remember having one of these.
Yeah,
but you had to have like the spool of paper to get any kind of calculations.
Right, like a receipt paper, and it like prints out. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe
That's
these
what
things.
it is. You punch the numbers with a pencil because it looks important.
I mean, you could use your finger, but he's doing it with a pencil, and he's got papers all around him, like he's trying to figure out his budget, right? And Balky runs in from the back, from the bedroom area, and he's all excited, and he tells Larry that he's gone through all the pockets and the chairs and the couch cushions, and he's managed to find $7.34 and a stick of juicy fruit that you can cut a diamond with.
Okay.
Juicy fruit.
This is the most amazing ridiculous random pronunciation of
Well, you know what
thing.
he's doing is he's pronouncing each vowel in juicy fruit.
Juicy fruit.
It's a phonetic pronunciation of two English words that don't sound anything like they're written.
But he says suitcase, so it's the similar thing. But it's so funny when he goes juicy fruit. I was like, whoa, that's a great pronunciation.
That you could cut a diamond with. So he's found an old piece of gum.
Oh, it's an old hard piece of juicy fruit.
And $7.34. So Larry punches in some more numbers into the thing, and then he keeps punching in some more numbers. And he says, well, if I add in what I could get from my Mustang, I could buy the Austin, but I'd have to live in it.
That's a fair trade-off. How badly you want this car, Appleton? And then Larry goes, you know what really bothers me? And Balky goes, when you think there's enough milk left for your morning coffee, but there's only 3 drops left in the carton? Larry goes, about the car. You know what bothers me about the car is that the timing of this is lousy. He said, why did it have to come on the market now? He's waiting on a raise, and he said, if I get a raise at my 6-month salary review, I'd be able to make the payments. But the review committee doesn't meet for 2 weeks. And then Balky suddenly goes, oh, they already met yesterday. What? Larry gets excited and realizes if they met yesterday, then there was probably a memo that said if he was going to get a raise today. And he sighs with relief because Balky now can help him out. He can tell him if he got the raise, except for certain words Larry has uttered to Balky earlier. Larry goes, did I get the raise? Did you see the memo? And Balky now is in a tight position, and he sticks to his code, and he goes, I can't tell you.
He gets very nervous. Yeah, he can't. And Larry's like annoyed. He's like, you know that
He's
if
like,
I
"Let
got
me
my
get this
raise
straight."
and you're not going to tell me.
His words are coming back to bite him in the butt, though. He told them about the code.
Yeah, but he doesn't realize it quite yet. And so Balky's nervous. He tries to change the subject. He's like, hey, why don't we go play racquetball? Racquetball with Jennifer and Marianne. And he heads for the front door and Larry goes, freeze. And then this is so funny. We have this like tiny bit of physical comedy, but so Balky's at the door with the front door, his hand on the knob. Larry shouts freeze. And he goes and he stands like right stuck on him next to him behind him, right? Like at the front door. He's like stuck to him and he just stands there. He's like, did I get the raise? And Balky says, I can't tell you. And then Balky takes a few steps toward the couch and Larry stays stuck on him and takes the exact same steps in sync with him. Same legs. So they're like one moving body, right? And then Balky takes a step in front of the chair and Larry again is to his side, just like stepping with him. And Balky says he lives by the male boy's code of honor. And Larry says, oh, forget that. And as they're saying these lines, Balky sits down on this chair that's meant to be for one person, crosses his leg, and Larry stays glued to him and sits with him in sync, crosses the same leg, and they put the same hand over the same knee. It's like just one body moving. It's so funny.
It's timed so good.
And they're like stuck together sitting
and I'm like,
on this chair for one.
Is Balky sitting on top of Larry? Is there even room on this chair?
Yeah, exactly. It was very funny. Very, very funny.
And then Larry goes, Balky, this is the 80s. Nobody lives by a code anymore. Just look at the guys who are running for president. And he goes, now, did I get my raise or not? Okay, who was running for president?
So remember, it's 1988. It's an election year. If you weren't around then, as some of us were, it was George H.W. Bush.
George Bush
who we've
Sr.
Referenced to. On the Republican side, running against Michael Dukakis.
Oh, it was
on the
Bush
Democrats.
versus Dukakis. I remember this, and I remember Saturday Night Live making fun of this, too.
That's right.
Clearly.
But this show, we're in January still, so it was still the primary. So if you look at this line, now look at the guys who are running for president. He could have been talking about all the candidates. So just a couple of a few names that were in the primaries, not all of them, but a few of them. For the Republicans, we had Bob Dole around.
I'm Bob Dole.
Who was a senator at the time. We had a televangelist, Pat Robertson.
Oh my God, Pat Robertson was running, yeah.
And also Dan Quayle ended up becoming the running mate.
He can't spell potato.
He can't spell potato. Only old folks like us will know that.
On the other side, I remember you had Ted Kennedy and Gary Hart, and then Hart got into a bunch of scandals.
Yep.
Lloyd Benson was his running mate, and he was just this old dude for Dukakis.
You remember
and I remember all this. And I remember Dukakis, he had a good chance, and when he did this appearance in a tank, right, for the military, it was like, I'm pro-military, but the helmet he wore made him look ridiculous, and he looked like a kid riding around in a tank. And after that, his points, the polling dropped, and George Bush wins it with Quayle.
So some timely political references in the dialogue.
And John Lovitz played Dukakis hilariously
on SNL.
SNL, yeah.
Excellent. So a little bit of election history there. Anyway, we're back in the scene.
And also, it's a callback to like the Read My Lips. Remember we talked about Read My Lips and George Bush, and this was like all happening. It was all this.
Yes. So we're back in the scene. Larry is still trying to find out if he got his raise. Balky is not budging. He says that he learned his lesson after he mistakenly told Mr. Gorpley about the memo. And then Larry starts explaining again that there's a world of difference between Gorpley and Larry. And he says meaning Gorpley, is a deceitful, mean person who used you to get information for his own selfish desires. then he turns very sweet. He says, I'm Cousin Larry, your friend who would never, ever take advantage of you. So you see, it's perfectly all right to tell me about my raise. And he's lying the whole time. He's just trying to butter up Balky so he could tell him if he got the raise. But after he says this line, there is this hilarious bit that's with no dialogue, and it's just, we've talked about before how they do a lot of acting with their facial expressions, and it's so effective, and they can convey so much. So it's just Balki and Larry looking at each other, and they're both like smiling. These like, Larry, of course, is smiling, like fake smiling, trying to ingratiate Balki. And Balki is kind of like blushing and smiling. And then they're both doing these goofy grins. And then Balki like laughs a little bit. Then he goes, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But I thought that moment of them like smiling and grinning and laughing at each other was very funny. He goes, I don't think so. And he like sticks to his guns. He won't violate his code.
Good
even
for you, Balki.
cousin Larry.
Boy.
Doesn't matter who, he's not going to violate his code.
So Balki goes to the kitchen, and Larry follows him going, Balki. He's still trying to reason. He goes, look, the raise is not a secret. I'll find out in a couple of days anyway. But then he goes, but I don't have a couple of days. Because the car is going to get sold by 9 o'clock tonight. And Balki still refuses. He can't tell Larry about the race. And he has a great line. He goes, asking a Meepiat to give up his code is like asking the Tsetse fly to give up his Tsetse. Well, I don't even know what that means. And then Balki goes, there's absolutely nothing Larry could do or say to even change his mind. But that's not going to stop Larry Appleton.
Of course not. He keeps trying, and so he tests the water. First, he tells Balki that, he wouldn't stoop so low as to offer him money.
Oh.
And then Balki gives him this, like, very funny, like, disgusted look. But Larry's just trying to see if he's enticed by that, and he's not. He's disgusted by it. So he changes tactics, and he tries something else. And then he says, I wouldn't dream of offering you something sweet. And then Balki gets nervous. He says, cousin, don't do this. And then Larry describes something called a Sears Tower sundae.
It sounds delicious, by the way.
It does sound delicious. And Balki, as soon as he mentions Sears Tower sundae, Balki starts like struggling not to cave in, right? And he starts walking away, and Larry crawls over the counter to follow him as he continues to describe the Sears Tower sundae. And here's the description. It's the tallest sundae known to man, a mountain of double fudge almond nut ice cream running with rivers of hot caramel and topped with mounds of whipped cream and cherries, as many cherries as you want. And he says, it could be yours, Balki. It could be yours. And not just tonight. He offers it to him every night for a month.
Oh, God, that's too much.
If he only just tells him if he got his raise. And at this point, Balki has collapsed into a chair in the kitchen. And he's like, this sundae is really enticing to him. And he's trying to fight the urge.
He's cowering in this chair.
He's shaking.
Himself.
And then he like breaks down and he runs to his bedroom. And he's like, I can't. And he slams goes into the bedroom, slams the door behind him. My goodness. This Sears Tower sundae must be something.
This is his weakness, yeah.
Have you ever heard of a Sears Tower sundae? I mean, we grew up in Chicago. You still live there.
Yeah.
Was this a thing?
No, I think it's just a clever way to describe a tall sundae. Maybe somebody had
with
one.
With a Chicago reference.
Yeah, it's probably too much ice cream if it does exist. You can't eat all of this. This is ridiculous. Anyways, Larry runs over, follows him to his bedroom, knocks on the bedroom, and tries to get Balki to come out so he can apologize. And Balki opens the door, and Larry's like, I'm sorry, Balki. And he kind of looks to the side.
Totally fake, by the way.
It's a fake apology. And somewhere here, Larry Appleton comes up with a diabolical evil genius plan to get this information, but he starts with apologizing and trying to be sincere. And he goes, I'm sorry, I've been trying to get you to break your code and you won't. Why? Because you have too much integrity, and hey, I respect you for it. He's being totally fake. And he's like, why don't we forget the whole thing and just go on with our lives? And to this, Balki is relieved to hear this. He goes, that would be such a big load off my spine.
He means load off my back, but also load off my spine is good too. Yeah.
You don't want loads on your spine. That's dangerous. You need to stack everything, stand straight. Anyways, they both do a little bit of sighing and really, everything. And then Larry, he came up with this plan right there. This is pretty incredible. They both sit on the couch, and Larry goes, it's funny. Sometimes the little things will change a person's whole life. And Balky's like, oh boy, don't I know it. And Larry wants to talk about himself. He's like, now take me, for instance. But then Balky goes, better yet, take the example of my cousin Christos. And Larry, like, they start to talk over each other. But Larry stops. He goes, okay, let me hear this story about Christos.
So Balky tells this whole ridiculous story about his cousin Christos. When his cousin was a child, he got kicked in the head by a goat. And then he couldn't sleep. He started having terrible headaches. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. And they all thought it had something to do with the goat kicking him in the head. And then finally, Balky realized that the hat that Christos had been wearing since he was 8 years old is just too small. And he said, you've been wearing that hat since the goat kicked you in the head when you were 8. Take it off. It's too small. And then this is the best. At the end, he says, so anyway, to make a short story long,
I love that.
He did, and it made a world of difference. And today, Christos is the Surgeon General of Mypos.
Yay, good for Christos. Wow, that's amazing. He's the Surgeon General. Everybody,
to make a short story long. I'm going to start saying that.
How many goat kicks to the head did he have to look at as Surgeon General?
It's such a random, ridiculous story in this episode that doesn't really need to be there, but it doesn't
have to do with the moral. And Larry's just like, fascinating.
Yeah, he just
and he's like, let's talk about me. And he sits there and he starts to guide Balky through this imaginary future of him. And they're sitting and they're looking out into the empty space, and he's describing what will happen to him in the future if he doesn't get the car. He points ahead, and they both look as if they're looking at this story like in front of them. It's so funny. And then Larry goes, "Oh, look, who's that? Why, it's Larry Appleton. But why is he sleeping on a park bench covered with newspaper? What happened to him?" And Bucky's like, "I don't know. His back is to me. I can't see him."
And Larry is so confused because Balky is seeing a different imaginary
He's like, "Oh, great.
future.
I have to describe this a little bit better because this is not going the wrong way."
So he goes on and he tells he does this elaborate story of how his life is ruined in the future because he didn't get this car. And some of the details are they say it started when he got this chance to have a car of his dreams and he couldn't take it. He was never the same after that. He spent all his time going to used car lots. And nobody had this car, and it was all downhill from there. He lost his job, his friends, his will to live. And Larry's voice even does dramatic, emotional voice. And Balky's starting to get teary.
Yeah, he's doing a good job.
And then Larry looks into the future, forward, where they're gazing, and he goes, "Oh my Lord, what is it?" No, he goes, "Oh my Lord. He just rolled off the park bench. I think he stopped breathing." And then Balky shouts out, "Cousin, don't die. You're getting a raise."
Oh, my God.
And Larry says, "Are you sure?" And Balky says, "Of course I'm sure." And then there's a beat, and he realizes that he tricked Balky. And then they have that very funny moment where they just stop and stare at each other. And Larry's got that smug, "I got you" face on, and Balky's in shock.
Balky's mouth is wide open, and Larry, of course, has those eyebrows that go perfectly up in the beady little eyes. They look right at him. It's so good. And Larry goes, "Thanks, Balky. You saved a life." And he smiles all wickedly and runs out the door. And I was like, oh, my God, Larry Appleton. That is the jerkiest, manipulative thing to do to your supposed friend. Wow, just because you want this car.
He's so self-centered. He just wants his car, and he doesn't. Yeah,
it was but I thought it was a genius ploy to pull on Balky's emotions and walk him through this thing to get him to spit out the truth.
That
it was
he got the raise.
crazy.
Also, I might add, what kind of a newspaper pays enough money to buy, albeit used, and we did think it was a low price to begin with, but to buy a fancy sports car?
Well, he could have been saving up, and the raise was just a little bit, just a little bit. Well, he needed to get him to the 7,500. Anyways, that's the end of Act 2. Before we find out what happens in Act 3, listener, there's a way you can support the show if you enjoy TGIF Fridays again, because this show comes out on Friday, and you get the nostalgia of the shows on Friday. Support the show. Visit danceofjoypod.com/support. You can buy us a coffee. You You can buy us one coffee. You can buy us monthly coffees or a one-time thing. It helps keep the show going. And we have a new person to thank, Sophia.
Thank you for 3 coffees. Drum roll. Thank you, Dimitri Sheep.
Get out of the city!
Dimitri Sheep is awesome. They bought us 3 coffees on our page.
Dimitri Sheep is, of course, an Instagram account, Dimitri Sheep. Check it out. We'll talk more about it a little bit later in the show. We have thoroughly been enjoying Dimitri Sheep's posts and following along of the episodes along with us. And so we're so thrilled to have Dimitri Sheep buy us coffees. And a personal note. So here's what Dimitri Sheep wrote with the coffees. In Mipos, we have a saying, Ifino kafenitiki, podka tota babastiki. Love, Dimitri, Balki, and cousin Larry.
That's so great. She wrote it new, and that Mipos, you know absolutely what she said. It makes perfect sense.
Our Miposian has gotten so good that I know exactly what this means. In Mipos, we have a saying, Ifino kafenitiki, if we don't have caffeine, podka tota babastiki. The podcast will be total babastiki.
Absolutely. So, Dimitri Sheep, thank you so much for the support, and Balki and cousin Larry, whoever this is. They're committed to the bit. I love it.
Love it.
That's so good.
Yes, it's Dimitri Sheep. That's who
it is. It's actual Dimitri Sheep.
Dimitri the sheep, the stuffed sheep. Okay, that takes us to Act 3. And now we're back at Lou's used cars. It's nighttime. Larry arrives back at the car lot just as Lou is putting the taped up price sign back on the Austin Healey.
His kid made that sign.
It's a very precious sign. And Larry tells him he's ready to buy. And Lou's like, okay, I'll go get the paperwork. He starts to walk away. He turns back. He takes the sign with him. So Larry won't tear it up again. Yeah. And then we hear a bit of sentimental music. It's not quite lesson time yet. It's a different kind of sentimental music. Larry's alone in the lot because Lou has left to get the paperwork, and he's just staring at this car excitedly, and then he's sort of like, his mood like drops, his expression changes, and he looks a little bit uncomfortable and maybe a little bit guilty.
He starts to feel bad and dirty.
It hits him. Larry has a conscience. He is sneaky and manipulative, but
he has a conscience. And MLB does this it's so quick and subtle, and it's all in the face, and you get it right away.
Yeah, there's no words here. It's just his expression. We just see him
suddenly
change.
he gets him in the pit of his stomach, and he just feels wrong, and
he slowly
walks away.
Turns around and leaves.
I was like, good for you, Larry Appleton. You can't buy this cart that way. That's not right.
So, which leaves us wondering, we'll never know if Lou's other buyer showed up at 9 p.m.
No, there's no buyer. Lou's mad. He's like, I should have gave it to him for $4,000.
So he leaves. Wonderful scene where the realization happens. He leaves the lot. We fade into the next scene, which is back at the apartment. Larry enters home. He looks around and he finds Balki sitting in the fireplace.
We've seen this before too. This is a Miposian shaming ritual.
Which Balki explains once again. He says, I am disgraced, and when I am disgraced, I have to sit among the ashes. And the only ashes around in that apartment is the fireplace. And then Larry does something condescending again. He's like, oh, right, that's one of those Mipos things.
Oh, it's just one of those weird Mipos things you do, whatever.
How rude.
But look, Larry goes, he sits down and tells Balki right away. He goes, I didn't buy the car. And Balki's like, oh, no? And Larry said, something happened when I got to the used car lot. This afternoon, the car looked soft and blurry, kind of glowed. And Balki goes, like Sybil Semper does on Moonlighting? And Larry goes, exactly. But tonight, after what I did to you, everything changed. Suddenly, it just looked like an old car. I realized I put that stupid car above our friendship. At least you learned something there, Larry.
That's it, finally. Let's talk about this Moonlighting reference.
Another great Moonlighting reference, constant.
So we have discussed in the past about how this show, Perfect Strangers, came on before Moonlighting.
Yep.
And Marklin Baker was on an episode of Moonlighting, which is how he got discovered maybe or cast for Perfect Strangers. And they're on the same night, and there's like a running gag that they talk about moonlighting.
They're always watching Moonlighting sometimes.
And Moonlighting, of course, was a show with
Sybil Shepherd and Bruce
Willis.
Young harmonica player
Yes.
Bruce Willis. And then, but the soft and blurry comment's also funny because they would often film Sybil Shepherd through a soft and blurry filter, which is a very forgiving filter. To make women look a little softer and more attractive, I guess.
Weird.
They kind of use that on...
do they have that filter on Zoom? I need that filter.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Just look for the moonlighting filter. Make me look like Sybil Shepherd in the 80s.
Yes.
But it was a thing. They would often use like a little smudgy soft filter.
Yeah.
It's dumb, though.
I remember when I think back, when I imagine moonlighting in my head.
You see Sybil Shepherd in this kind of soft glow.
No, I see it in this soft glow. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, me too. For some reason.
So we kind of are get a hint about the lesson in the last line.
Yeah.
I realized I put that stupid car above our friendship. But then we get the lesson time music. So now we know we're going to dig into this lesson a little bit. And Balky is like, he's touched, he's moved, but because Larry didn't buy the car, he's like impressed. And he tries to get up from the fireplace, but he's like, I don't know how long he's been sitting there. He has some trouble. So he crouch walks from the fireplace over to the couch where Larry is, or the chair, this little like duck walk kind of thing. And he goes, oh, you didn't buy the car because of our friendship? And he tells Larry that he's proud of him. And Larry is like, proud of me? But I made you violate your code. And then Balky points out that that's true, but he didn't even know he had the code until Larry told him about it.
Look at him looking at the positive side of things.
which opens the way for more self-pitying from Larry. And Larry says, yeah, I'm great at pointing out codes to other people. I just don't live by them myself. And Balky's trying here. And he's like, no, you do live by a code. It just takes a while for it to kick in. And Larry goes, well, I wish it would kick in sooner so I wouldn't feel like such a jerk. Balky tells him he's not a jerk. He says, you're tricky and devious and a lousy bargainer, but you're not a jerk.
Wait, didn't we just go? We went through this like 2 episodes ago where Larry's like, I'm a jerk. And Balky goes, you're not a jerk.
Yeah, it's
but
like
Larry's
this
a
episode
jerky.
felt very like repetitive in a lot of ways to me, but we'll talk about that in a minute. There's still a little bit left in this scene. There's kind of the crux of it, right? Larry has a code. He's a good person, but it just takes him a minute.
Takes him a minute to get there.
Takes him a minute.
In the meantime, he's being a jerk while he's figuring it out.
He's flawed.
Yeah, he's a
but
flawed
he's a good
individual.
person. So the final little bit is that Balky wants to cheer Larry up. So he's like, let's go get a Sears Tower sundae. I'll buy. And Larry says, no, I'm the tricky, devious one. I'll buy. And then they start arguing about who's going to buy, back and forth. And then we see something we've seen before. Balky grabs Larry by the shirt. And he says in a very serious voice, he goes, look, I want you to be cheerful. I'll buy. And Larry just goes, okay. And then he lets him go and he starts straightening out his shirt and roll credits.
Yeah, that's a fun episode. Before we dive in, I have some thoughts about this episode. But listener, if you want to buy something, we have stuff for sale with our logo on it at our TeePublic shop, danceofjoypod.com/shop. We got t-shirts, tank tops, tote bags, mugs, travel mugs, all with the logo, all in lots of colors of apparel and different styles. Go over there. There's always sales going on. Pick something up. Send us a photo, and we'll make you famous in the Facebook group. You'll be a celebrity.
Okay, let's talk about this episode. For me, this was not a super great episode. I mean, we had our classic things that we enjoy. We had good wordplay. We had clever writing. We had some research-worthy things that we learned about and stuff like that, common tropes. But in terms of the story, I didn't find it to be super meaningful. I thought, from the beginning, I thought it was weird. I'm like, I get why they're using Gorpley to do this setup about don't tell people what are in the memos, but why does my mind just stayed fixed on like why in what world would Gorpley like absolutely desperately need to know about his gas claim reimbursement?
It's like they combined like
what situation
two
is
plots
that
for two
thing?
different episodes and kind of smushed them.
Yeah, it was
in
kind of
one
all
episode.
over the place.
But it has, great staples. The last bit where he pulls him up and he goes, "I'll buy." It's again, it reminded me of the typewriter. Take the typewriter.
Right.
And Larry's like, okay.
So, I mean, I feel like it was just a vehicle, pun intended. The story was just a vehicle for these like common gags and tropes and jokes, but story-wise, there wasn't anything super meaningful, nor did it flow very well for me, but what do I know?
It's all right. It was all right. It was like an average episode that had all like the greatest hits of the thing.
I just don't know why Gorpley would need to know about his gas claim reimbursement so desperately. Like, and I also think it would have been, for me, it would have been a little bit better if we knew what was so special about this car for Larry? Like, why did he need this car so bad?
Speaking of the car, I thought I got it confused with, I thought it was a car that was featured in James Bond movies that he drove, but that's the Aston Martin, not the Austin Healey. But the other thing is, Michael Baker has a way to make Larry really be like a jerk and just be unlikable, but then end up being likable at the end somehow. Because the trick he pulls on Balky is so mean.
So
and
gross.
It's so not a good friend move to do. But then you end up being, so silly Larry at the end.
Okay, but in other episodes that we've seen recently, at least in the stories, we knew clearly why the stakes were so high, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like Larry, sent a joke article to the publisher. Oh my God, you need to get that back.
Yes.
It's bad if that doesn't happen. Things like that. But here, I just didn't believe that the stakes were so high
it's
why
the
he
9
needs
p.m.
this car.
deadline.
And,
he's obsessed with the car.
Yeah, but they weren't high enough for me
I can see
to
that.
drive
That
this
makes
story.
sense.
But but like I said, I still enjoyed it. I still laughed a lot. Just the story didn't do it for me.
I feel you. That makes sense. We did have a Dimitri appearance, though. You could see him on the bookshelf. He's wearing a shirt, and he's got a piece of tape over his mouth. That's fantastic, so that he doesn't leak any secrets also.
Speaking of Dimitri, we mentioned our coffee gifter.
Yes, thanks again, Dimitri Sheep.
Thanks again, Dimitri Sheep. And again, please go to Dimitri Sheep on Instagram and check out Dimitri Sheep is an Instagram account by Dimitri the Stuffed Sheep, who is posting photos of himself
themed to every episode that we do.
Photos for every episode that we review. So the photo for this episode
is brilliant.
Is kind of brilliant. It's like, what it reminds me of?
I just got
in improv, they have this technique called A to C, right? You're given a word suggestion and you don't need to take the actual word and run with it. You can say, this word reminds me of
get to C,
another word, which reminds me of another word.
Yeah.
And then you can do a scene about that C word. So like it's these, it doesn't have to be directly about the episode, but something tangential. Very clever. Very clever, Dimitri Sheep. So this week's post, do you want to describe it?
Yeah, so first of all, the location is the Chicago Auto Show, so you get points for that. But the post is actually a post about Dimitri as Christos Bartakoumas, the Surgeon General of Mypos. You have Dimitri Sheep in the middle with a Band-Aid that says ouch on him. There is a medical bag with the Red Cross to the right. There's a bottle of Advil and pills that are spilled. And on the left, there's boxes of Band-Aids. And in front of him is his name tag, I guess, where he works, because it says Christos Bartakoumas, MD, Surgeon General Mypos. This is brilliant. They did a post on Christos. That's so clever. Oh, it's so
Dimitri Sheep, we applaud you yet again.
Well
every single post has been so brilliant.
Because I first looked at this and I was like, wait, what is this? And then when you look at it closer, I'm like, oh, my God. You have to look at the
details,
that's
very
so
specific
good.
details in this account. We love it. Keep it coming. We love that this is happening.
Krista still has the
I am
bump on his
here
head.
for
And there's a
the
Band-Aid on it. It's so good.
Yes, the head. Yes.
Okay.
His head hurts because the hat was too small.
The head's too small. Take it off. What are you doing?
Love it. So brilliant.
So look, this episode was okay, but we had a bunch of good Balkyisms. I think I have what they call a pornographic memory. Is hilarious.
Wait. I just saw another detail.
Another detail in the Dimitri Sheep post, yes?
Yes, there's something red around Dimitri Sheep's mouth. It's a zipper.
Oh, his
As
mouth
in my
is
lips
sealed.
are
His lips
sealed.
are sealed. He's not talking either.
So
oh
it's
my
a
God.
little hard to see because the
angle.
tablecloth is red also in the angle of the photo, but there is a red zipper.
And it now combines the main theme of the episode.
Yes,
oh my God.
Very well
so
done.
good.
Sorry, it took me a moment.
I was wondering, I couldn't tell what that red was either. I was like, is he wearing something behind his head? That's a zipper.
Very cool. We love this account. I'm here for Dimitri the Sheep. Everyone, please go follow.
Yes, and thanks for the support, Dimitri Sheep. Anyways, Balkyisms, pornographic memory, funny. 4 on the floor. We figured out what that is. It's better than 2 in the bush.
Does a meepiat spit in the woods? We learned something new about meepos. They
love
spit
spitting in the woods.
Why don't we quit beating around George Bush and get on with this? Very nice, very nice.
I got a big load off my spine, and then to make a short story long.
Love it.
So that short story long also reminds me. You remember when Abe Simpson on the Simpsons would he had a great line. He goes, "To make a long story short, is a phrase that has a long and winding history that we used to say," and he just keeps on going. It's the funniest thing. We used to wear an onion on our hip, which was the style at the time. Oh, Abe Simpson is great.
Oh, so funny.
Don't be ridiculous, said once.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
Thank goodness. And then we have just like a bunch of other repetitive. Again, this episode was like a lot of repeat gags and phrases.
Greatest hits.
Yeah, it's a greatest hits, but the story kind of fell through, but greatest hits in every other sense.
Yeah.
We have "You really stepped in something good this time." That's one of our favorites.
Line.
We've got to watch.
That's a great.
And learn.
Those are always great.
We have "I don't think so." We have an "Oh my Lord," but it wasn't said in that way. It was a regularly spoken.
And then we have Larry going "Balky, Balky, Balky," but to Lou. This is great when he did it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then the greatest hits of the running jokes continue. And I love
greatest hits.
Balky diffusing Gorpley and just exposing what everybody thinks. And Gorpley
so innocently.
And Gorpley could not get him. It just never works.
Love it.
It's so good.
We have Larry trying to make a point, and Balky jumps in with a different point. We have Larry's manipulating Balky in any way. This whole episode was about that. We have Balky. We have a lot of their like Larry Balky bickering over each other.
Yeah.
Balky sitting among the ashes. We've seen before as well.
Yeah.
And then his grabbing Larry by the shirt. All these greatest hits. I think that's the summary of this episode.
The greatest hits, but the story gets a little thin and lost throughout the greatest hits. So I wonder which way it went, where they came up with the plot first and then worked the greatest hits, or they're like, we got to put these things in. It seemed
to me, it felt like they did not have the story, like they pieced together the story around other things they wanted in the show. And I think that's what is like grating on me, that it doesn't feel quite right.
It's interesting to think
like it's contrived a little. Like what?
You think about a few years in the future and how Seinfeld comes out and how the brilliant writing where there was 3 plots going at the same time and they would all collide at the end in just hilarious coincidence. That's hard to do.
That has become, I don't know when it started, but that has become a classic format for sitcom, for a 30-minute sitcom.
I really think Seinfeld was the one that pushed it because they would consistently
3 storylines that
every
come
episode.
Together.
Do you know how hard that is to write well? Oh my God. And they would kill it. Like in the middle, after the first season, the peak seasons until the end, they would kill it with that format.
And here in Perfect Strangers, we only really see one storyline every episode.
Yeah.
Maybe 2, but most of them are single storyline episodes.
Seinfeld changed the game a lot of ways when it started. It's kind of the transition.
Now we are at a segment of our show called Perfect Strangers Today, in which we discuss if this story were happening today, how would this episode be different, or how would things be different?
I mean,
what do you
there's
think?
people don't still have confidential memos sitting around and stuff like.
No, first of all this accounting stuff, it's all electronic. Again, we often fall back to like technology and social media in this segment, but yeah, we don't have paper memos. Some people might, but
You got encrypted emails that are, unless somebody accidentally.
You need a password to submit your reimbursement claims. And
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like
you got
that.
to do it all in the system, and then you find out right away. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's just a
send
weird
it to
thing.
Expensify.
Yeah. Oh, that's the app, is it?
Yeah.
And buying a car, also a very different experience today.
Yeah, I mean, like Larry wouldn't be as desperate, right, to like get that one right there. Like now we have the internet; you could find the car you're looking for anywhere.
Probably find a bunch of them
at
available.
Different prices. You could compare. Yeah,
dude, do you have Carvana that you literally go online and they come and they drop the car off in front of your house? Oh my God, you don't got to do anything, and then they'll take your car if you're selling it.
But Larry would still be just as manipulative, but maybe he would have some updated ways of manipulating Balky to tell him.
Yeah, how would he get the confidential information, or how would Balky see it? It'd have to be
how
a whole...
would Balky see it? It would be like you said in the beginning, like what happened to
by
you.
accident. Yeah.
An email that was sent to you by accident. We've all been there. Super juicy stuff.
It's a
when
contrived
you see an email
story.
you're not supposed to see.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to see this. Yeah, that's what would happen. And Balky would be like, delete. But then he would have seen it already.
And Larry would have like replied all by accident or something.
They try to like get it out of the trash on the computer. Balky, undelete it. Where is it?
We have a listener comment about Perfect Strangers today. Cousin Evelyn Behar says somehow Willis Tower Sunday wouldn't have the same ring to it today.
I agree.
She, of course, is referring to the Sears Tower, the iconic high-rise in Chicago that has since been renamed Willis Tower to the chagrin of many Chicagoans.
What you talking about, Willis? That's what I think about every time now. They say Willis Tower.
Those of us who grew up there will never call it Willis Tower. We will still call it the Sears Tower.
But look, you had to sell. You got to sell things. You got crazy building names now. All these arenas have like Dunkin' Donuts, Taco Bell Arena. It's what happens.
Taco Bell Arena.
Dude, they have some ridiculous. Look up arena names.
That sounds delicious.
There's like Office Depot something arena. Like they have the.
It's ridiculous.
It's so funny what these names are.
We don't have a Balky Dud segment today from our friend Rainey because there's only really one vest featured on Balky throughout this episode, and it's the one that Rainey calls opening sequence.
And it's called opening sequence because in the beginning, when Balky pets the horsey in front of the water tower, he is wearing this vest, which is why it's called opening sequence. So again, a little dry spell in new Balky vest, but I'm sure we'll hit a gold mine soon.
We're bound to. All right, we've got some more shout-outs.
Ooh, shout-outs. I like
as we mentioned earlier, we have the the Dance of Joy podcast group on Facebook, and there we have quite a few, a growing number of dedicated listeners and devoted Perfect Strangers fans who are getting very in the weeds with commentary about every episode, and it's great. It's wonderful. We're at the point where there's so many comments now we can't read all of them, but we have some choice selections. So first up is Cousin Evelyn Behar again. Cousin Evelyn writes, right after Larry delivers his "Why don't you just watch and learn" line, Balky makes a hand gesture that was pure comedic gold. This gesture is so expressive, foreign, sarcastic, daring, challenging, surrenderful. I don't know how to describe it, but it communicates so much without saying a single word. Well done, and the audience clearly loved it too.
You know, all he needed to add would be like an Indian like head bob, like a desi head bob, and the hand gesture. Because
the hand gesture was very desi. Yeah, it was like that curling hand thing.
But if the listener doesn't know about the Indian head bob, it's the most hilarious motion that neither says yes nor no, but also says both things at the same time, and you don't really know what it means.
Okay,
it's like you're agreeing and shaking it off, but you're saying okay, but your head is saying no. I don't know how to make of this.
Cousin Evelyn also writes, I thought this was a fun and cute episode with one of the special sentimental plus funny endings that came to exemplify the series. Really like this one a lot. They were totally on their game.
She's a fan of
this
this
is
one.
super interesting,
Yeah.
like how all of us hardcore Perfect Strangers fans sometimes react differently to different episodes.
Absolutely.
For me, this was enjoyable. They're all enjoyable, but this was not like I really like. It wasn't like a super strong episode.
Everybody gets something different out of it, but I can see how when the sentimentalness of it can get you.
It's all about that music.
Yeah.
That sentimental
But
music.
to me, the sentimentalness kind of fell flat because he was being such an evil manipulative. You're just snap out of it.
Yeah, and I also because we didn't know why the stakes were so high. It wasn't clear.
Someone's
and I feel
gonna buy
like
it at 9.
if
That's
we as viewers understood that and felt it more, then that sentimentality would have come through stronger.
Yeah.
Someone's going to buy it at 9. I knew that was
enough.
I knew that was a tactic, and I didn't really buy it. Yeah.
Nobody's coming. Anyways, more shout outs. Cousin Pam Hitchcock says, I like the running gag of Mr. Gorpley being totally unable to insult Balky. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And she loved the way Balky pronounces juicy fruit. It's so funny.
fruits.
It's fantastic. And then regarding the car, she goes, Larry only goes by the eye candy. For example, the first time he sees Jennifer, he has to have her. Same thing with the car.
Very good point.
And especially a red car. You know how much you got to pay more insurance on that, Larry. It's red.
He already has a red car. He's already paying more insurance.
You don't need a shiny red car, Larry. Who do you think you are? Just get a SUV.
That's a very good point and character assessment by Cousin Pam. Thank you. We also have some notes from Cousin John in Colorado.
Oh, he invented a great new word
right.
here.
He says another example of manipulation.
What are we talking about?
That's good.
Manipulation. Love it.
Manipulation.
That's like Larry's splaining and manipulation. It's a good thing Larry's often pitiable, or he'd start to be unlikable.
That's what I'm saying. They're riding a fine line between just hating this guy.
The lovable
in this.
loser.
Yeah.
Cousin John also writes, Balky's terrible story of Christos is a thing of beauty.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Next comment, hopefully Larry doesn't learn his lesson about manipulating Balky. Otherwise, I don't know what we'll all do for 4 more seasons. Also,
That's
a very
also
good point.
a good point. And I don't think he's going to learn his lesson about manipulating.
No, of course not.
No.
And finally, Cousin John writes, a paper-thin plot that could have been made into something much more. It's a prime example of how great acting, likable characters, and a funny script can really breathe life into a weak story.
That's dead on.
So this is a perfect way. Cousin John writes it better than I've been able to articulate.
I think that's
exactly
a great way to describe it.
Yes,
Yeah,
very good. Like, and what he's talking about is what we called the greatest hits, right?
Yeah.
Like this was just the story was weak. The plot was thin, but it was a great, again, vehicle, pun intended, to showcase these other strengths of the show, the great acting, the characters, the funny writing, in the jokes at least.
Yeah, you could hand them almost anything and they'll make it fun.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks for all the comments. And again, join our Facebook group if you want to leave your observation or questions, and we will share them. Stay tuned, stay subscribed, of course, because next week we're getting an antagonist character that we have seen before.
The cousins get a visitor from their past.
Oh, boy. And this is not a guy who's recast as somebody else. He's playing the same person.
The same character.
So that's good. It's not confusing at all.
Whoever could it be? We'll find out next week. In the meantime, please do get in touch with us. Visit our website, danceofjoypod.com. There you can find all the links for where to find the podcast, where to like, listen, and subscribe, where to leave us ratings and reviews, etc. You can also find all the links to our social media accounts. We're on the Facebooks, we're on the Twitters, we're on the Instagrams. Please visit us in all those places, see what we've got going on. And most of all, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, click a little button on the bottom right, and leave us a voice message. And of course, you can hit us up on any of the socials as well. But what is the most important thing for listeners to do, Imran?
Always wash your hands for 20 seconds minimum.
That is a very important thing. What comes after that?
Well, look, the most important thing is to be nice to one another and share the show while you're being nice to your fellow man. Spread the Perfect Strangers fandom. There's going to be a resurgence. Turn people on Hulu. Tell them you can watch the whole thing on Hulu. And now you can
listen to this
along.
podcast.
Absolutely.
Share our show with a friend. We want everyone to have 22 minutes of joy in their lives. I'm talking about Perfect Strangers, of course, and listen along with us and join our discussions in this podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Dance of Joy podcast. Now we are so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy.
Hey, 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 hey.